Okay, we're back. I was sitting while I was doing some transfer and speaking to the Lord about how much He wanted me going into this, because this can get quite deep and revelatory. In the book of Joshua right now, but we just I'm going like how God tell me go. God just lead and guide me, because this is deep. Anyway, tech company. I'm just going to say this. There are some tech people that exist in several tech multi-billionaire people in high power places. This guy is found in a tech company's corporate office laying on the floor dead. Okay? 3 people in high power tech positions. Okay. Now, with this, this guy was involved in ran robotic operations, which literally means the guy was involved in taking care of this robotic system. Because at this point, people's jobs have been taken over by robots. Pause. Let's just address this. We are living in a time right now that if you pay attention to the signs of the times, that everything is attempting to shift over into artificial intelligence. I mean, everything is attempting to shift over. And nobody paid attention to how swiftly they attempted to shift everything to artificial intelligence. Your cell phones now have AI on them. Your computers automatically, on a certain update at the beginning of the year, just changed over to AI. Everything is AI generated, AI gen, all of the AI. Now, prior to this, we know in the past 10 to 15 years, they have been researching into creating robotic people. We've seen, if you Google anywhere, that you can see interviews where I think even Tony Robbins interviewed a robot. And there are actual videos on YouTube of people talking to Siri and asking Siri deep thoughted questions, and Siri answering with some very disturbing answers. You can research this. You can just look it up, Google it. Okay? So, with this being said, this cop comes in and he's been asked to investigate this man's death who ran this department, okay? So the man left him a hologram note with a riddle. He was specifically requested to take this case. For some of you, you ever heard the saying, success leaves clues? Certain things that God will show you, He will leave clues in plain sight where most people won't recognize it. Remember, Jesus spoke in parables, and it's a statement in the word scripture that literally states it's for kings to search things out. Some people will go word by word only. I get that. 100% get that. But in some cases, God will speak to you from other places. And if you're not paying attention, you may miss it. Don't depend on God speaking to you only from other places. That's where you mess yourself up. God will speak to you. If he needs to get a message to you, he'll put something in front of you over and over again from something else. Because you just so happen to not be looking at the Bible at that particular point in time. God will put his message before you repetitively in whatever it is that you're looking at. Know that. Understand that. Don't get caught up in people sitting there saying, oh, God can only speak to you in the word. Everything else is witchcraft. I've gotten some major confirmations that brought me back to prayer to the Lord, which brought me back to revelations, which brought me to a confirmation that because I prayed in the moment I saw that sign, something shifted for me because I paid attention to something and it wasn't in the Bible. Okay? So don't get caught up in people saying, oh, it can only be in the Bible. There are people that, because they only sit there and read the Bible only, when God's speaking to them in another way and they're having a little bit of distress, they're like, oh my God, God's not speaking to me. He probably put something directly in front of your face, but because you're like, I do Bible only, you missed it. God is speaking to us at all times, in every way, in everything. Why? Because God is the blacksmith that made the weapon. He made everything, and he made the thought that the person had to create the thing that's sitting in front of you. So if he made the thought to create the thing that's sitting in front of you, how can he not speak through movies? How can he not speak through television? Why? Because does the scripture not say, I'm trying to get off this horse, but does the scripture not say, follow me if I'm not right or wrong, that God pours out his spirit on the just and unjust? So would he not pour his spirit out on the just and unjust, including the ones that are in the movie, the music, the all of this industry? And then you sit up there and you listen to these songs, and that song sounds, dang, that sounds right in alignment with what God was talking to me about, but it was an ungodly person that sang that song. But at the same time, there's other songs that are written by godly people. But the irony is there are ungodly people, or people that you would sit there and consider ungodly people, that are following God behind closed doors, but everybody believes that they are ungodly because they're in an industry that's ungodly. While contrary to that, there are people that are out here in gospel music, CRM music, that are dealing with such horrible sins, all of the things that are sinful, but because, oh, they're over there in gospel, that they get, come on now. I'll never forget when Tiffany Montgomery did a video where she talked about God will test your ability to discern people. Because God's about to put a lot of his people in places, and you would sit up there just because you're in a place. And some of you will be put in these places, and Christians will vilify you because you're in these places, because God sent you there. Think about it. And there are other godly people there. Anointed God all over these folks, because God sent them in there first. I'm just saying. I don't know how I got on this rant, but yeah. Coming back to my focus of this film, that he had to look at the hologram. So he's checking the scene, and he goes up to meet the boss of the company. Okay? So let's check the facts. The guy that operated the robotic program is now dead. They have to talk to the boss to find out what was going on, or why this man could potentially be dead. Did he have any enemies, so on and so forth. So the guy offers him coffee. The man tells him that he had been friends with this guy for 20 years. He wants to rule it a suicide, but Spooner continues to refer to it as a death, not suicide, meaning his boss thinks that it's death, not suicide. He meets Dr. Carlin Landings, the assistant. She takes him up to the lab and they check the cameras. No footage can be recovered for the internal cameras, meaning someone erased the tapes. Okay? There are some things that have happened and have gone on in certain high places and positions where tapes have been erased, things have been removed, certain things in order to cover up or protect, prevent, or make sure certain things don't get shown, don't get past the public. But God has a way of making things that even people tried to cover up to be exposed. If you recall, when I did the review of the movie Fighting Temptations, that it was the very own brother to the woman that was acting like the nuisance the whole film ended up outing her. There are people in high places that during these times that certain immoralities were happening and all these things that, and it's funny, I was listening to Stephanie P the other day. She was making a point of saying that there are people that in the midst of all of the things that have been going on, that they've been sitting there trying to put accusations, insinuations, and a bunch of lies on individuals, that when they've come to the realization of the truth of what actually happened, they're going to start what? Deleting photos, deleting posts, deleting informations, deleting stuff. Because they don't want to be associated with the truth as the exposure is coming out. That's a side note. But I feel it fits what we're saying, okay? Because they rather believe, and this is coming up. I was in worship earlier today, and I was being reminded of the fact that there are a lot of people. The guy who was investigating this case, he wanted to rule it a suicide, but Spooner, his boss, wanted to rule it as what was it, homicide? He wanted to rule it as. There are people that will try, that when you tell them the truth of a scenario of what they see and fully understand, that they will try to adjust the reality of what you said to fit what makes them feel comfortable. Okay? And I've been seeing this 2 or 3 times. Because they feel uncomfortable, envious, jealous, whatever it is, they will always try to put a narrative upon a situation. And when they're stuck in their thought process, there's no way to change their mind. Even if you don't see it that way. And your perspective of the situation is not of this format. Okay? So, he goes up to the office that he was killed in, and he's looking around. There are people that are investigating the facts. Ooh, God, you want me to go there? I'm going to say it like this. In 2020, there were certain facts that were released in relation to certain things that were being suggested at the time for people to do, take, have, so on and so forth, read between the lines, at that particular point in time. But people started to question the solidity of these particular Pandora's boxes elements that they were being instructed to take at the time that they started to do research and people started to come out, expose, reveal truths at the time of certain information that proved that what was being said was either harmful or, and I even recall seeing a video of this where a woman questioned a man about how he felt after he took this particular thing that they were talking about at that time. And when he took it, he said that he felt like he had been separated from God within his spirit. Okay? So, with that being said, they go in and check, and then he was thrown. Let's see. They go in and check around, and there was a hole in which was in the glass that the professor was thrown out of. No human could have fallen from that hole, okay? Because the glass itself that he was thrown out of was unbreakable. And it's interesting because on the table was the book Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel is a childhood book of, it's not really a nursery rhyme or something, but it talks about two children that followed breadcrumbs into a witch's den, pretty much. You want me to say that like that? No. Society, now, okay, I'm going to say it the way I see it. Society has a way of operating in a level of propaganda that there are 7 mountains: entertainment, music, education, politics, family, trending things that make the dictation as to the direction, therefore leading you by following a series of breadcrumbs to direct you into the direction in which they want you to go in. How do I understand this? I studied journalism when I was in college, okay? When I was studying journalism, there are only 6 major media formats and networks, okay? All of them are run by one individual, or shall I say family unit. Is that guy still alive? Because I'm trying to think of what his name is off the top. But they run radio, TV, media, film, newsprint, and it's another one that's off the top. I can't think of it. But these are the ones that are in control. Ever notice how anytime a major event happens, within a matter of hours, all the way across the world, all media outlets have all the information and they're running the same story? Now, interestingly enough, one of the ministers I follow released a video that showed that during one particular point in time, during the midst of the Pandora's box, that there was a particular news headline that was brought forth on the media, and they showed in this particular sequence set of clips that every news outlet was releasing the exact word-for-word media coverage in relation to this thing being released. Understand this. There is such a statement that states, whenever a person hears something, it takes 21 times of hearing it for a person to begin to believe it. Ever notice how when the media wants you to believe something, one, they run it all day long. If you sit and watch the news 24 hours on a day that a major event has happened, you hear the thing 21 times in one day. Easy. You'll hear it 21 times in one singular day. Why would they work so hard to make sure that you hear it? You know you heard it the first time. Why did you need to have breaking news 15 more times throughout the day talking about the exact same thing, repeating the story over and over and over? Because hearing, you'll start to believe what you heard, whether it was true or not. The way that they lead you with breadcrumbs, and I also learned this, I was in college, they had us taking, what course was that? That actually was an artistic course, but they talked about propaganda in there. And they talked about the way that in which you would create a signage, and artwork in order to, and they were teaching this in college, get certain things across, okay? So if you have the mountain of media, trends, technology, what's trending, if each mountain sits on top of one another, the trends pour down into the people through the media and entertainment that continues to portray, because let's just side note this, ever be watching a TV, ever see something happen, it's a certain story that in entertainment they want you to believe. Ever notice how every television show starts doing storylines and scripted episodes that recreate the exact same scenario to make your brain, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, to tell you that this scenario is true, because each show is showing you that. If it's a crime that technically occurred in the entertainment industry, you'll see whatever the popular television show is, whether it's Scandal, whether it's Law and Order, whether it's whatever the show is, they will run a case that's almost duplicately identical, but will tell the storyline to plant a seed in your mind to make you think, breadcrumbs, whatever it is that they want you to think. They will have news outlets, and I learned this in journalism, that you'll have the news outlets will run, this news outlet will tell the positive version of the story. This news outlet will tell an indifferent version of the story. And the last news outlet will tell the negativist version of the story. I'm telling you, I study journalism, so that don't really get past me, okay? So, why did I say that? Breadcrumbs. They must set up the breadcrumbs. All right? So with that being said, he says there's no human that could have fallen out of this window. He walks around the room and suggests that the killer was still in the room. In some cases, when you're seeing things on the media, the very thing that they are directing your attention towards is a distraction. And understand this, come to find out, Tiffany Montgomery made this point in one of her ministry words, that this is actually considered to be a demonic reference to a demon that disassembles or separates you from whatever the secondary word is. Distraction. Okay? Traction is your ability to have momentum forward. A distraction, in all actuality, is in order to shift your attention away from the truth, because it's distracting you from it. You see how they work? Oh, okay. Come on, moving past this point. So, he's looking through the robot parts and Sully jumps out. The assistant was not convinced because in order for it to disobey one law, he would have to disobey the first law, which was impossible. Do you realize that the word impossible means I am possible? I'm just throw that out there. Anyway, so the robot takes the gun and puts the gun on them. He jumps out the window and is not listening to her at all. The robot comes out running and there was a chase, but he didn't catch him because he jumped over the balcony all the way to the ground and ran out. They couldn't get down there fast enough to catch him. So in this case, this is where I want to bring in scripture. The Lord brought me to, when I started to do the write-up for this review, the story of Moses. What was Moses' situation? If you tell me if you catch it, tell me if you catch it. Moses, when he was in Pharaoh's house, he grew up in Pharaoh's house. But remember the day that he had to leave Pharaoh's house when he accidentally killed a man. And what happened? He took off running and left. Did he not? What did the robot do? Just take off running after having been accused of what? Killing this man. Is that not what happened to Moses? Catch it. So, he goes back to the boss thinking pretty much an open and shut case. The robot did it. His boss thinks he's crazy. He asks to question the robot. His boss is saying no. He finally gives in and lets him do it. Okay? In some cases, you have to be acute enough to be able to see through the propaganda that everyone is trying to show you. Now, no, you're not supposed to sit there and stare at the news all day and pay attention to what's going on. But sometimes the Lord will allot you the ability to be privy to certain information. And when you're privy to this information, you have to ask the Lord, why'd you let me hear that? What was it that you were trying to show me? And he'll continually bring to you evidence, information, so on and so forth. Especially for those of you that are called to be watchmen on the wall. Watchmen on the wall will watch patterns. They will watch patterns, whether it be in news reports, whether it be in things that are happening in the world, things that are happening geologically, climately, so on and so forth, even in the news in certain patterns. They'll be able to tell the difference between what's being said in one country in comparison to another. I was listening to one of the ministers I was listening to, and she was talking about the fact that her husband, who is a watchman, he was listening to a news program from another country, I believe is in the UK or something like that, and it was a particular news story that they were putting out in relation to something that was happening in America. And the story that they were putting out was completely different than what the U.S. was putting out in relation to the same topic. Manipulating the direction of the story. But the question is, what was happening, not so much that the UK was manipulating it, but could it have been that the United States was manipulating the direction of the way that the story was being told? I remember it was a news story that came on, And my father's not one to really pay attention to certain things like that, but he does watch the news pretty frequently. And it was a particular news story that they kept showing footage. And my dad said, "That's weird. I've seen that footage before." And it wasn't in this news story. It was a piece of footage from another news story. They reused the same piece of footage. And this, now, if this is a legitimate news story, why would they use a cut or a clip from a past news story when this is supposed to be something that's just happened? Unless they were what? Creating the breadcrumbs in which they wanted the individuals to see, hear, read. I'm going to leave that right there. So, with that being said, Detective Skinner is questioning the robot. For some of us, I need you to look at this in two ways. Him questioning a robot is you as the human being versus artificial intelligence. Okay? What is artificial intelligence? There is a literal battle going on, okay, here. And this comes in, I'm hearing Revelations 12, that would happen between the battle of the angels versus the serpent. But also, I'm getting this. I was going to introduce this a little bit later. The Battle of A.I. You know there is actually a battle in the Bible that talks about the Battle of A.I. Do you know what the Battle of A.I. truly was about? The Battle of A.I. was about the fact that, all in all, there was people that took a offering or a sacrifice that was supposed to go to God. Whether God said the sacrifice was that this thing was to be destroyed, or the sacrifice was that it was to be given up as an offering to God by being burnt or being whatever capacity. But the person decided to what? Take this thing from God. And in them taking it, they